I'm Tom Rust. I work for the Fort Worth Park and Recreation Department, City of Fort Worth. I'm Assistant Park Supervisor in charge of the water garden. Most people call me Rusty. My job consists of taking care of the pumps and all the ground maintenance to see that everything's working right. I feel more home down at the water garden than I do in my regular home because I'm down there most of the time. In fact, my wife thinks I'm married to the water garden. There's over 100,000 people visit this water garden every year. They come to eat, they come to get married. Some people comes just to sit and watch the water run. Even some comes to swim. But they come from all over the world. But 15 years ago, it was another story. Up above here, there was a bunch of old buildings, hotels, stores, and buildings that undesirable, and the Carter Foundation bought it for the water garden.
Well, the South Main District 15 years ago is so ugly that you can't imagine it. It was run down, it was smelly, it was dirty, uncared for. But at that time, the hope was that there would be some way to revitalize that part of the city. And there was the immediate hope that we could turn that blight into something beautiful, rather than let it continue to fall down in that area. When we finally did get down to the decision on the water gardens, there was never any choice but Phillip Johnson.
Any architecture has to enclose you. I use a terrible word simply because it emphasizes it more than a good word would, is cuddle. If you feel cuddled, this architecture has been a success. Now you can feel cuddled, believe it or not, in St. Peter's, because the architecture is so overwhelming, and you can feel cuddled in the Pantheon, or at home, but you can't feel cuddled in this office, for example. Now, it can excite, it can calm, it can enhance music, for instance. It can depress. It shouldn't. It's good architecture. It's got to excite you in one way or another. No, it's not a noble room. It's just a thing with misplaced calm. Right. The grave question, do you think more of what people do, or are you just trying to create a work of art? Are totally inseparable questions. Texas is really the luckiest, well, the only lucky state in the Union, you see. It sits right in the middle. It's as big as most countries, and it has everything, especially money, and it has the best architecture and the best chance of getting ahead, and it's sort of an American dream, you see. So to me, Texas is the center of the country. All my best work is in Texas.
Most Texans don't know how to use park space because they're not like other city dwellers who live in apartments and don't have their own little backyards. They don't know what it means to have an open space to use.
The question in Fort Worth was how to get in and get away from the city and still have a feeling of being in the city. Well, to get illusions like that and to create places like the main street in Disney, where Disney keeps fire trucks going back and forth, where you don't feel cut away from the world in Disneyland. See? You're always in with the automobiles go right by. You can keep cars out of his main street in Disney World. We didn't want to cut out the city, but we wanted to be able to put people in another mood and to get them so they would come back and get them so they would come every day, maybe. It's now 10 years. People are still going to Water Garden.
It occurred to us in talking about it together, as we usually do on all our projects, that what was lacking in this part of Texas was water.
In a middle of a town, the only thing besides putting up a honky-tonk, Ferris wheels, or games of chance, or Disney World streets and streetcars, was water. Because water does all kinds of funny things. It jumps, it's quiet, it makes mist, it makes films, it goes high, it goes low, it falls down, it makes a noise. The background of waterworks is, of course, endless in history of architecture, and that's what inspired us. All the successful use of water to create breaks, to create gathering places, and to make separations, and to make rivers that run fast and lakes to go calm. So water has this absolute fascination of impassibility, danger, falling. It can do things that nothing else can do, and affect, for our purposes in Fort Worth, of course, the more water we used, the more little things we had for people to see.
And the design is something out of this world. You hardly ever see a design like this. Phillip Johnson did an excellent job. I don't see how he could draw all these curves and stuff, but he did it anyway. But it's something unique, and I don't think there's any other place like it.
The difficulties were almost insuperable. The first place, first version of the design, there was only one effect, which you saw from many different aspects. There were little, interesting little places to sit and get up and so forth. But now we've got 5 different spatial experiences. We had to give variety, just as Disneyland does. That's, by the way, one place where anybody can learn anything. Disney was a genius. Architecture is, of course, by the essence, a spatial arrangement that gives you some emotional reaction. Now, we had a great chance at Fort Worth in handling these 4 or 5 different effects that we were playing with, that we wanted to juxtapose, that we wanted to give different senses, different chances to play. How do you connect them? How do you make a processional? Now, there is one of the very best ways to illustrate the importance of processional, and that's in architecture in a Gothic cathedral, where you come in the front door, and 400 feet down at the other end is the altar, and the processional, as it gets darker, as it gets dimmer, as you walk, the columns go by you and by you and by you. It has a terrific effect on your psyche. One decision we made absolutely right was to come in at the corner. In other words, as you drive by the park, you have no idea what the glories are inside. You just get a wall and some green and some plain, but the way you come in is a perfectly natural way from the city. What you do feel is if you're going through a contained part of the park, the gardens, it will open out later into a wider vista. But nevertheless, as you feel closed in here, so you feel impelled to go on to the bigger space of the park.
Well, that's the idea of compression from the city and then expansion into the park.
Yeah, see, that's another thing. When you work with water, not like when you work with architecture, you know more or less you put a brick on top of a brick what it looks like. Water, it's like fire. You have absolutely no idea. You say you're going to sit here, and you have little nozzles with spray. Now, is that going to be a nice effect, or isn't it? Well, look at it this morning. Of course, it never looked this way when it was new for some reason. But our idea here was to keep the top of the spray of the water on the same level as the walk. You see, so the water doesn't spray on you, it sprays on itself. If you were good at walking on water, you could feel you could keep right on going and step on the step all the way across. It's all coming back to me now, how hard this was. It's lucky we didn't have any other jobs at that time. We sweat blood on this fountain. And it came out. It's just marvelous. Much improved. This dewy effect is also right attached to the main square. In other words, you never can get lost in this park. These 4 or 5 different impressions I'm discussing are not just separate and you got to go look them up. They all front on the main square where you sit on the edge of the path. Oh, by the way, there's one thing that's worth mentioning is that every wall in the park is 20 inches high. We did a lot of research on what would perching height be. See, 14 inches is perfect. 18 inches is the height of a regular chair. But we picked 20. We don't want you to recline. We don't want you to lie down on it. We want you to perch long enough to take your weight off your feet and take in the impressions of the effect that you may be at that time looking about. Every single one of these water effects is so placed that you're slightly surprised, but pleased, and you're practically forced to go right by it before you make the entrance in. But the quiet garden is the easiest example, because you can look over the wall into the quiet garden, and then you do see, by Jove, a little stairs. Well, another thing a little stairs does is to attract you more than a big stairs. That, of course, is Alice in Wonderland idea of going through a little door into a garden and then eating the other half of the piece of cake. It's irresistible to go down a little stairs that you can't see where it comes out. So you go down the little stairs, and then your processional feeling of going around the White Lake, pressed against the wall. There's nothing of human scale anywhere to break the monotony of that 20-foot high wall that surrounds this pool. Even if you didn't go there to contemplate, you would have been so reduced that your pulse would be a quieter pulse, because the architecture forces you to be quiet. The processional of climbing the mountain. It turns and turns as if it was a microcosm of a great road going over a mountain. The idea of a microcosm, by the way, is also extremely important. Every one of these effects is a microcosm. Look, she's going to come down. Watch it. Now, come on down, kid, come on. That's right. That's what mountains are for, to climb. And you see, they can pretend they're on high on the Alps.
The first mountain a Texas kid ever climbed.
That's right. That's just great. The microcosm that we have in Fort Worth gives you pleasure, partly because it is a microcosm of something much bigger. Because it's very pleasant, as Alice in Wonderland knew, to get small and then get big again, and never knowing which is when. Even in that little 5-block square, you can still create little spots of interest and little places where you can come out and maybe sit down, and maybe not. See, up to our right, we can look up into the little thing. You're not quite sure where you're going to get to if you go that way. And this way, you can see it opening up. You leave the arid square of the town, go through a grove, and then come upon this noise that you can hear very well from here if you close your eyes. and then gradually get down into it, and it'll come down on us.
Well, let's go ahead. Why don't we climb down and see?
The walls of that chasm are lined with rushing water. And it goes down very, very steeply. It goes down so steeply that we have to have steps to carry us down if we are going to go down at all. These steps are so arranged that the water slides under the steps, which is another very interesting feeling. If water rushes, and you know it's rushing right under your feet, you have a sense of pseudo-danger, which is an extremely important aesthetic effect.
The noise is terrific in here. It's just exactly, it takes away, we can hardly talk.
It's almost the same as the quietness on the other side. It just fills you so much with very wonderful noise of water. It's almost the same as quiet.
But in a different way. It's quiet. It's exciting.
When you get to the bottom, the water just sucks down into nothing. And you feel sucked down like the ships in the Maelstrom story into the pit, and there you are, perfectly safe with the water rushing around you. And all around you is no more Fort Worth, hardly any people because you have to shout quite loud over the noise. And it's just the water coming down and falling under your feet. See, the whole point of architecture is to make people want to see it. Otherwise, you just wouldn't bother. Okay? So the whole point of the water there was to create something that would keep people coming back and coming back. And that's exactly what has happened.
As far as working at the water garden, I guess it's part of my life. It's grown on me for the last 9 or 10 years, and it just keeps growing on me. If I walked into a building and seen a fine piece of art, well, I couldn't tell it where it was real or not unless somebody told me. But if you look around the water garden, you don't have to think about it where it's real or one of these copied arts, because you know it's real. And it's just a fine piece of art.